Hey guys, so I'm going to do a mashup review of Warbreaker, Elantris, The Emperor's Soul, and Six of the Dusk, all by Brandon Sanderson, all a part of Brandon Sanderson's Cosmere universe. I read Warbreaker like a couple months ago and haven't gotten around to reviewing it. I just read Elantris this month, I just read Emperor's Soul this month, and I just read Six of the Dusk this month. So I have a lot to say about all of them, but I'm going to try to condense it into just one video to make it easier. And I know people like mashup review videos better than just single review videos. So I just wanted to see how this worked. The very first one is Warbreaker. Warbreaker takes place on a world in the Cosmere called Nauthis. It surrounds two sisters, princesses from a country called Idris, Vivenna, and Ciri. Idris doesn't get along with a neighboring country called Hallandren. Hallandren has threatened to take over Idris for years, but there is a sort of tree built between the two of them around the idea that when Vivenna, the older sister, turns 22, she'll be sent to marry the God King of Hallandren. And we'll get to more about him in a minute, in order to try and create a kind of peace between the two countries. But the king of Idris decides not to send his favorite daughter, Vivenna, who's been trained to handle this since birth, basically, because he feels she'll be more helpful at home with all of her political knowledge and abilities. And instead, he sends Ciri, the less experienced of the two, for political reasons I won't necessarily go into too much right now. Vivenna, a kind of cold and analytical girl, very smart and knowledgeable, feels her purpose has kind of been taken away from her by her father, and goes off to find Ciri and bring her back to save her, basically. Unknown to her, however, Ciri actually manages herself not too terribly, but Hallandren, for both of them, all of it, is a bit different than what they expected. Now, before I go on, I'll say a bit about the magic. Everyone on Nauthis is born with a breath, something inside of them that sort of fills them up. You won't die if you give your breath away, but it does create some noticeable changes in your general emotions and your ability to see colors and whatnot. And you can only give your breath away. It cannot be taken from you. So people sell their breath to others. And when you collect enough breath, you can draw upon the colors of an object and use it to awaken something. And this is called biochromatic magic. And it depends on how much breath you have to how strongly it works for you. You don't lose breath when you use it, but you transfer it to whatever object you're awakening for whatever amount of time you're awakening that object. It's transferred back to you as long as you do everything correctly when you're done. For example, someone with a certain amount of breath could draw color from pieces of colored cloth they carry around with them to transfer breath to an object, which awakens that object and puts it at that person's command. There are other rules and limitations and things, but that's just the gist. In Hallandren, there are these people called returned gods, and they have been given a divine breath after death. And it's unknown to the people where this divine breath comes from or why. It's just generally believed that it only happens to someone who died doing something heroic. And so since these people have come back from the dead, they're worshipped as gods, and they're given names like Lightsong and Blushweaver and Peacegiver and Mercy Star, etc. Lightsong in particular is a main character and is overall one of my favorite characters in all of Brandon Sanderson's writing. He's a returned god that doesn't believe he's a god, and he just constantly tries to disprove the fact that he is a god. And then there's another character called Vasher, an awakener with a lot of breath, and he's just very mysterious in general, and he's another favorite. He owns this sword called Nightblood that talks to him in his head, and it says stuff like, "Hello, would you like to destroy some evil today?" And that's all the sword really wants, this ambiguous, vague goal to destroy evil, this need to destroy evil. And he's another one of my all-time favorites, and kind of works a bit with Vivenna when she goes to Hallandren. Warbreaker is one of my favorites of the year, possibly because of how much it surprised me. I loved the characters and the story and the surprises, and its place within the Cosmere. This book has just some of the best character development in any of Brandon Sanderson's books, especially considering it's a standalone. There's just a lot of twists and turns in the arcs of characters, and it all just feels really natural. All of the characters have this great progression that just really works well, and I love them all. Then there's Elantris. This is probably my least favorite of them all, but it's still good, and I still enjoyed reading it. Basically, this doesn't focus on a magic system the other way his books do. It's way more political and actually kind of takes place after a magic system is relevant, after it's kind of died off. There was this city called Elantris, people who lived there called Elantrians, and they were these beautiful, glowing people with silvery skin and the ability to use magic to do many different things. Elantris was the absolute hub of this magic, it seems. But now the city is dead. 10 years ago, something happened that turned the Elantrians into these diseased-looking people that never heal and never die. Like if you get cut, that cut doesn't go away, and you feel the pain of it for the rest of your life, which is forever, unless your body is burned or decapitated. What used to turn people into Elantrians, those beautiful silvery beings that could do magic, is called the Shroud. And now when someone is taken by the Shroud, and people still are, they are also turned into these never-healing, diseased-looking people, and they're dumped into Elantris, basically considered dead by society standards. When Elantris originally fell, the neighboring country, Arlen, takes more control and kind of establishes a new government around the merchants, and the richest, most powerful merchant, a man named Iadon, becomes king, and his son, Prince Raoden, who disagrees with his father on basically everything and is pretty much loved by everyone in the country, falls to the Shroud and is dumped into Elantris. And then a princess named Serene from Teod has decided it would be a good idea to marry Raoden to help out her country, who's a bit disconnected with the rest of the region. When she arrives, however, she finds that Raoden has died, and now she's stuck there without him. Meanwhile, a Durethi priest named Hrathen from the country Jordan has come to Ireland after doing his thing in other countries in the region to convert the entire country to Durethi. People of that religion believe their way is the only way, and Hrathen must find a way to convert this country and hopefully finally rid it of Elantris before the Durethi leader, Wern, decides to just destroy everyone in it. So Hrathen is doing that, Serene is trying to fix this country she's just arrived at without Raoden's help, and Raoden in Elantris is trying to figure out once and for all what the hell is happening there. This book isn't as strong as the others, mostly the characters are a bit static compared to the other books in the Cosmere. Also, the story is kind of slower, but despite all of that, it's still really interesting to read about and has a lot of really great things going for it, really great ideas. Despite their static nature, I did really like the characters. It also brings up some pretty interesting questions for the Cosmere. The magic system called Aeon Door uses this invisible energy that's sort of collected around Elantris especially, called the Door. Using these symbols, this language that consists of these things called Aeons, the Elantrians used to be able to tap into the door in order to do a huge variety of things, depending on the Aeon they used, from lighting a room to fixing the bones in someone's body. It just has many different uses, but it doesn't work anymore. It's all very interesting despite its slowness, and I'd still recommend it to everyone that likes Brandon Sanderson and the Cosmere. Next is The Emperor's Soul, and this actually takes place on the same world as Elantris, a world called Cell, but in a completely different part of the world, and the magic system is called Forgery. A forger, after learning everything they possibly can about a specific object's history, can create something called a soul stamp for that object, and when pressed onto that object, can rewrite the object's history. Take a painting of a lake, for instance. A forger could study the history of that painting, create a soul stamp for it, and make it so that in the object history, the painter painted a mountain instead. And that's just an example. There's other aspects to it that relate to many other magic systems on this world Cell, but once again, that's the gist. We follow a forger and thief named Shy. She's recently been captured for attempting to steal and forge a copy of the Emperor's scepter, but is given the chance to save herself from execution, the normal punishment for such a crime, and she is told that the Emperor has been a victim to assassins. They didn't kill him, but basically left him brain dead. If he remains this way, the faction that helped him rise to power will lose that power. So they force Shy to learn the history and personality of the Emperor through personal journals and the accounts of people who knew him well, to forge a new soul for the Emperor. It wouldn't be bringing his mind back to life, it's just imprinting a personality and memories and stuff onto him. He knows only and whatever Shy puts into her forgery. This is really good. It won a Hugo Award, and I can see why. It's well written with a lot of really interesting concepts, and it just works really well. I wish it was longer. I wish it went into more depth of some of its ideas, but it's solid nonetheless. And Shy is a really well written character, and it's just fun to read about what she's doing and how she does it and why. And because it's short, it's a really quick read, and I say definitely give it a shot. And finally, 6 of the Dusk. This takes place on another completely different world in the Cosmere called the First of the Sun. The story surrounds this group of islands called the Pantheon. The main island on the Pantheon is called Patchy, an extremely dangerous island where our main character, called 6 of the Dusk, or just Dusk, operates as a trapper, someone trained to study, breed, capture, whatever, these birds on the island called Aviar. The Aviar all have special abilities and kind of share those abilities with their trappers. Dusk has 2 Aviar, one called Cokerly, which hides Dusk's cognitive footprint, and this is important because there are these giant birds called night moths, which sense cognitive activity in their general vicinity and kill whatever they find. So Dusk's other Aviar is called Sack, and it has a very unique ability and special ability to show possible futures to Dusk in the form of letting him see his own dead body in places where he could possibly die. So if he sees one of these corpses appear around him somewhere, he knows there's some sort of danger nearby. Outside of the Pantheon are the Elican Home Isles, where most people live. A home islander named Vathi stumbles into one of Dusk's traps on the island and is extremely interested in Dusk and what he does. She basically admits there's more home islanders on Patchy with this machine. Now, above all of this, literally, are these beings that are only known as the ones above. I won't say much about them or about anything else surrounding the machine, only that the machine is from them. And Dusk is worried about the presence of it, of Vathi, of the Home Islanders, of the ones above, and basically anything that changes his world. I really, really love this. It's honestly astonishing to me how easy it is for Brandon Sanderson to build a world with such depth in less than 100 pages, which this story is. The character Dusk was one I could relate to really easily. He hates noise, keeps to himself, and just doesn't understand why Vathi needs to ask so many damn questions all the time. Why Home Islanders need to talk just to fill the silence, and he loves what he does, and the islands and the AVR. Vathi is also well written, and this world is just so freaking interesting. There's so much more to learn about, so many questions, and I love it. I really, really hope there's more in this world eventually. I want to know more about it. I want to know what implications it has on the Cosmere. There's just so much about it that could go in so many different directions, and it makes me really excited. I keep mentioning the Cosmere, and I want you to know that you do not have to know anything about the Cosmere as a whole to enjoy any of these books. You don't even have to read Elantris before you read The Emperor's Soul, even though they take place in the same world. What's amazing to me is how well each of these works by themselves, and when you see deeper, see the whole picture, see their place within this universe Brandon Sanderson is building, it adds even more to my appreciation of each and every one of these books. Read them just to read them and enjoy them, because you can do that for sure, but just be aware of what's lurking in the background and the possible connections between it all. There's now only one story in all of Cosmere that's out so far that I haven't read yet, and it's called Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. I'm reading that right now, and I'll mention it in my December wrap-up. I'll likely be finished it before this video actually goes up. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know if you like this video, this mashup of all this stuff. I talked about 4 different things, so hopefully it wasn't a little too much, but yeah, I really hope you guys would check out Brandon Sanderson and these books and more books in the Cosmere. And yeah, I'll see you guys very soon with more.